Do Americans decide to have kids when someone they like is in the White House? This paper argues that Donald Trump's election in 2016 appears to have affected one of life's most important choices, whether or not to have children. Between late 2016 and 2018, fertility fell much less in Republican voting areas than in Democratic voting ones. This Trump bump shifted 1 to 2% of American births from blue counties to red ones. One possible explanation is that Democrats, feeling less confident about the future, avoided having children, and Republicans, feeling more bullish, had more. But if presidential politics really did drive this shift, then in theory, it should have reversed once Joe Biden took office in January 2021. We analyzed the data to find out. Let's start by comparing average fertility rates in Democratic and Republican voting counties over time. They've been falling everywhere, but faster in liberal areas than in conservative ones. At first glance, it certainly doesn't look like there's a Biden-induced baby boom. But if you zoom in, you can see that the Democratic and Republican lines moved away from each other during Trump's first term and stopped diverging after Biden won. Might politics explain this slowdown? To find out, we need to try to separate this factor from everything else that influences fertility. One way to isolate it is to compare different parts of the same state over time. So let's look at California in the 2012 presidential election. Let's break up California into its most Democratic and Republican areas, and take, say, the 20% of people living in its bluest and reddest counties. Using these groups, we can see that in 2012, fertility rates in Republican parts of California were already higher than in Democratic ones. The same was true all over America. The most Democratic parts of states had below average fertility, the most Republican ones above average. And over time, this gap within states has been growing. If you shift the lines to show the difference from the start of Donald Trump's first term, you can see the partisan fertility gap surged during Trump's final years in office. But something seems to change after 2021, right when Biden became president. All of a sudden, the gap actually shrinks. Does this prove that partisanship caused the reversal? Not necessarily. Another potential explanation is COVID. Democrats restricted their normal behavior, including having kids, much more than Republicans did during the pandemic, and vaccines were rolled out just when Biden took office. So the Biden-era rebound might not be political, but instead just a return towards pre-COVID levels. The historical data can't tell us which account is right. To know for sure, we'll need to keep monitoring the numbers in 2026 and 27. If the partisan fertility gap starts to grow again now that Trump is back in office, that would strengthen the case that politics does indeed have an effect on procreation.